Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Rando Rob. I hope you've had a good weekend. I hope you're having a fun spring. This is we're past spring break, at least for us around here, and now we are heading into the school year. So we are looking forward to that. My daughter is looking forward to that. But the other thing that's going on this time of year is garage sales. It is garage sale season. I recently, the neighborhood that I grew up in they still to this day have, I'm going to put this in air quotes, neighborhood garage sale. But it's a far cry from the neighborhood garage sales that they used to have when I was a kid. When I was a kid, the neighborhood, I think I figured up one time, has about 300 houses. And it feels like there was a year where every other house participated. More than 1/3 of the houses, definitely more than 100 garage sales in a 6-block neighborhood. It was crazy. It was traffic jams. My dad used to work second shift. On garage sale day, he'd have to leave the house early because the traffic was so bad in our neighborhood that you couldn't get out. But this is back in the 80s when garage sale day was, neighborhood garage sales were a little bit more of a novel idea. And now, today, lots and lots of neighborhoods, I don't know if I would say most neighborhoods, have some sort of garage sale event. Last weekend, the multiple neighborhoods around us all had their neighborhood garage sales. The one next to us advertised more than 130 sales on a single day. And then some of the other neighborhoods nearby us also had garage sales. And at that point, it's impossible to see them all. So you see the ones that you can't. When you start off in the early in the morning, you stop at every garage sale. Oh, hope I find this, hope I find this. But as the day goes on, you start doing that thing where you drive by slowly and you look up the driveway and you go, it looks like furniture. Just keep rolling. Looks like clothes. Don't need that. Keep going. But we got a bunch of stuff. That's the best thing about garage sale day is that you take a pocket full of small bills and change, and you come back with all kinds of treasures. I bought probably half a dozen things this weekend that will eventually get featured on Rando Rob. Things from small things, some Star Wars things, multiple Star Wars things, which is crazy that old Star Wars stuff is still showing up at garage sales. And then there's the story of the wise man. We decided he is the fourth wise man who got lost on his way to Bethlehem. And of course, he had a story with him as well. So lots of good stuff. It's garage sale season. It's my favorite time of the year. I love going out looking and searching for treasure, but settling for what you find. That's a good way to describe garage sales. On today's episode of Rando Rob, this is not necessarily a random a collectible, so to speak, but it is something that I purchased and something that allows me to enjoy retro type things, which is my favorite thing. And this is actually a handheld gaming system I'm going to show you today that I just purchased. And this is the cute little case. If you're watching the YouTube video, the cute little case that it came in. I like cases that have some sort of unique property so that I can easily identify them. And this one around the seams around where the zipper is a bright yellow stripe, so I can look across the room and go, oh, that's where that thing is. But inside here I have a couple of charging cables, but I have a gaming system that I just purchased a couple of weeks ago. And this is a Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. So I'm holding it up. By the way, I have something in my eyes too, so I'm rubbing my eyes. That's a great, I really went to the the YouTube school of attractive videos here. Now these are available. Well, let me tell you what this is first. This is a Android-based handheld gaming system that is made in China. They've been making these for a while. Believe it or not, there was a Retroid, then there was a Retroid 2, and this is the Retroid 3. The Retroid 1, the actual shell, the case looked like an original Game Boy. It was that kind of size and shape. But I believe since the Retroid 2, and this is the Retroid 3, they have switched to, I don't know what you would call this style. It looks like a Nintendo Switch to me, or any kind of handheld gaming system, PSP, anything like that. I would say from across the room, if I saw a kid playing this, I would go, oh, it's a Nintendo Switch. By the way, I've been holding it. I'm showing it to the camera, and I've been holding it upside down the entire time. That's always a brilliant move. So this is a little thing that comes from China. It runs Android operating system. And it's the MSRP price, if you will, is $150. The problem is you can't get it for $150 because the place in China that sells and makes these is either always sold out or back ordered, and then you run that risk of I'm always worried about QA. Are you going to get a bum machine? Are you going to get one with a scratch on the screen? Things like that. And if you are trying to return something to a manufacturer in China, that sounds like a hassle and a long wait to me. So these do show up on eBay and Amazon from resellers and private resellers, people that did do that process. They bought them, they're marking them up, and then you can buy them. So I paid $200 for this one, which is $50 over the MSRP price, but I bought it off of eBay from a guy that had great feedback and takes returns and is located in the United States. So I just wanted that extra little bit of insurance and assurance that if I had a problem with this, I could return it and actually deal with somebody. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about this. First of all, the case on this. Now, again, there was there was the Retroid, the original Retroid, the Retroid 2. And then earlier this year, they released a Retroid 3. A lot of people went and bought the Retroid 3, and it works great. It plays. This is a gaming system, I would say, primarily designed to run emulators. It does run, Android games as well. It also can run work like a Steam deck. And plus, being Android, you can also, if you wanted to watch Netflix on this or do something like that, you could certainly do those things too. But they released the Retroid 3, and this is a Retroid Pocket 3. And I guess the Pocket is the model, the Retroid is the company, but nobody seems to call this a Pocket. They just say it's a Retroid 3, Retroid 3 Plus, whatever. Anyway, earlier this year they released a Retroid 3. A lot of people went and bought it. They said, what a huge upgrade from the Retroid 2. And then, within 2 months, they released the Retroid 3 Plus, which is what this is, which has a faster processor and more RAM and runs everything a little bit better than the 3. And I think this made a lot of people upset. It would have made me upset if I had bought something and 2 months later they released a new one. Imagine, waiting for the new line of cars to come out, the 2023 Corvette, and you've been waiting and you go buy the 2023 Corvette, and 2 months later they release a new 2023 Corvette that has more features and is faster and does all these other things and is the exact same price. You'd probably be a little upset. I would be a little upset. But I had been watching the 3 and I hadn't pulled the trigger, and then I saw the 3 Plus, so it worked out for me. But again, I think there's some people that were a little bit irritated by that situation, and I understand that. The rumor is that the screens on these, now if I had an original Game Boy Advance, the very, very first Game Boy Advance, and I have never been more disappointed with a screen on a gaming handheld, and I didn't have some of the other earlier ones too. But the screen on that thing was so terrible. I remember turning it on and thought, oh, it's not turning on. And then I turned it and I was like, oh, it is on. I just couldn't see it in those lighting conditions. Like I had to sit underneath a light. And of course, that's something they've improved over time. Technology has got better. But the rumor is that these are actually new old stock iPhone screens in this. They are beautiful. This thing lights up. It's bright. It does 720p. You can run. There's a HDMI port, so you could run this out to a television and play games or things. So the screen on this thing is beautiful. I absolutely love it, and it is a touch screen, which we'll talk about the advantages of that in just a moment. Now the case that's on this one, you might not think looks very exciting. It's gray and it's a lot of gray, but there are dozens of cases available, different color combinations, and I specifically picked this one, even though it looks a little boring, because this is the Super Nintendo retro color scheme. So it's a light gray. The case is a light gray. The controls are dark gray, and then the 4 buttons on the side that are your little normal joystick buttons are the light purple and dark purple that are color matched to the Super Nintendo. But they have dozens of different ones, and they also have a bunch of see-through cases if that's your thing, or you want to be able to see the guts inside this thing. They have a see-through purple and a green and a blue. I saw a lot of those. But they do have different color ones. They have the not just the Super Nintendo colors, which is what this is. They have the Super Famicom. They have the original NES, if you want red buttons. And so all different kinds, and none of that affects this. And apparently it's not that difficult to swap out cases. I'll never swap out the case. I don't care that much about it. But I'm going to tell you real quick about the controls and buttons on this thing. You've got 2 analog joysticks, one on the left, one on the right. You've got a D-pad on the left, which is pretty functional D-pad. I haven't had any problems with it so far. And then on the right, you've got your 4 buttons, right? Now on the top, you have shoulder buttons. You have like L1 and L2, like those buttons. And then behind that, you have the triggers, like R1 and R2. Now I did learn that those are digital. They're not analog like on the PlayStation controllers and a lot of other ones, but they still allow you to play games. And then you've got a little switch here at the top, which is start and select. It's not in the most convenient place, but if you put it anywhere else, I think it would get in the way. Plus, how often do you hit start and select during a game? Like you got to stretch your index finger over half an inch and then press it right there. So that works for me. And then on the top here, you also have your, and I'm going to get this wrong. Don't buy the right cable based on what I'm about to say. This is either a mini or a micro HDMI out. It's not a full-sized HDMI out. And then on the other top left, on the top up here, you've got your power button. On the bottom, you have your USB-C port, which you can charge and use to copy files to and from this device. You have a 3.5, is it 3.5? It's not 3.5 inch, 3.5 millimeter, I think, 1/8 inch headphone jack, which I wish children would use. I wish every time I went to a restaurant, I saw kids with headphones on instead of me having to listen to whatever they're watching on their tablet loudly while I'm trying to eat. Bastards. And then we have something that's kind of interesting. Well, there is a little tab here that you can pop out, and that is where you can put a second micro SD card. Now, this comes with a micro SD card, and I believe another point of contention between the 3 and the 3 Plus is that I believe the 3 might have come with a smaller SD card. This one came with a 128 gig SD card, which is good for a long time. I mean, you can put a lot of ROMs on a 128 gig SD card until you start getting into like CD-ROM images and stuff. And why would you need CD-ROM images? We'll talk about that in just a second. But I opened up this tab and I purchased off of Amazon last week a 1 terabyte SD card and stuck that in there, which won't go down that tail, but it's just amazing to me how I grew up on floppy disks that held 180K, and so to have something that will hold a terabyte on your thumbnail is kind of scary. To be honest, to put that much data in one little device. So anyway, that's kind of what you're looking at here. You got volume over on one side. Over here, you've got something. I don't even know what that button is. I do know. Oh, this is a home button on these sides. So again, it's out of the way. You don't accidentally hit it, but when you're playing emulators and things like that, that works. I'm not going to run through a whole lot here, but I just want to turn this on and show you that when you fire this up, you can put other front ends or launchers, I guess, on the device, but it comes with one that works pretty well. It just says Retroid Pocket Launcher, and let's go back to the menu. So I will show you this just so if you're watching the video, you'll be able to see kind of what the interface looks like. But what you see here is just a large series of icons showing different emulators, and this has by default when you turn this on, it says, hey, what emulators do you want on here? And you press some buttons and it goes, all right, and it puts that on there. So, but pretty much when I look at a device like this, and I had another device like this several years ago, and I think this should be able to play 8-bit games and 16-bit games. That's what it should be able to do. And so we can see here, I mean, we've got Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Game Boy, Nintendo 64, which is something that sometimes that separates the men from the boys. But then we see like Nintendo DS. Now, Nintendo DS is interesting because, as you know, the Nintendo DS has 2 screens. And the way that this console works, I mean, it's running an Android emulator. But basically, it will fill the screen here with one of the DS screens, and it will put the other DS screen in a little side window off to the side. And then you can use one of the hot buttons to swap the 2 screens. So it works. It worked, you know. Of course, NES, Super Nintendo, that kind of stuff, right? But now I'm going to show you 2 that are on here, right here in the middle, that were shocking to me, to be honest with you. Right in the middle there, if you can see those, there's 3 there in a row. The first one says Nintendo GameCube. The second, in the middle here, says Nintendo 3DS. And the third says Nintendo Wii. Now, that is mind-blowing on this. I mean, again, we're talking about a $150 electronic gadget here from China. So I was blown away, and so I went online and looked. And I said, "Can this really play Wii games?" And the answer is yes and no. It doesn't play every Wii game for sure. I mean, you wouldn't want to play any Wii game where you're wiggling the Wii mode around and doing that. But for the ones that were like basically side-scrolling platform type games or driving games and things like that, it works. It really works. I was amazed. Of course, Nintendo GameCube. There's a lot of great GameCube games. I'm going through here some more. PC Engine. If you're familiar with RetroArch, the emulator, which emulates a bunch of systems, by default, when you press a button, this puts RetroArch on here. So anything that's in RetroArch, again, if you're familiar with that, that's going to be your 8-bit stuff, your 16-bit stuff. It just drops all that on here. Here's all your Neo Geo stuff. So this will play Neo Geo. Here's MAME. Again, here's a few interesting ones. Here is the Sony PlayStation, the PSP, which was the PlayStation Portable. And right next to that is PlayStation 2, followed by the original PlayStation. It had no problem playing that stuff. And I'm going to round out, but here's a couple. Again, these are all Android emulators. So if you have a high-end Android phone or Android device, this might not be surprising to you to hear some of these. It was surprising to me. On this screen here, we can see Of course, Sega Genesis and Sega Master System, which would be no-brainers, right? And Sega CD, which is a little bit more processor intensive. But then right next to that, Sega Saturn. This thing plays Sega Saturn games. Here's the 32X. And then the last one on here that I think that would be impressive, of course, here's all your Atari consoles. Here's your Capcom emulators. Here's the Sega Dreamcast. Does this play Sega Dreamcast games? Yes. This is not a yes, but. This is a yes, and. Why would I say that? Because not only does it play Dreamcast, but this is what I want to get into. It improves Dreamcast games. This console and the emulators have the ability to what is called upscale. So imagine a picture that you took with your very first cell phone, or a picture you took with the very first digital camera. And if you look at that on a monitor today and blow it up full screen, it's going to look pretty pixelated, right? Well, these games were programmed back when they didn't have as good a resolution as what we have now, right? And so what these things will do is actually rescale them. They will kind of interpret, I believe, pixels in between where pixels aren't, and do color shading and things. You press a button and all of a sudden it looks 10 times better. Black magic, I don't know how it works. It's amazing though. And on the Dreamcast, there's a button that says scale it up 3 times to 720p. So as you're playing now on this tiny screen, and I say tiny screen again, this is like an iPhone 6 screen or 6 Plus or whatever. So it's not that small, but you play a game on Dreamcast or Nintendo 64 and you go, yeah, these games were kind of pixelated. These games, that we didn't quite have the graphic resolution that we have now. You turn these features on and it just smooths everything out. It doesn't blur it. It doesn't blur it and make it smooth. It makes it like HD. It is really an incredible feature that a lot of these emulators have. And again, where that shines, not just when playing on this system, but also, don't forget, we've got HDMI out right here. So if you could use this literally as a video gaming console in your living room. You could use HDMI out and run it to your TV. This thing is, again, it's an Android, more or less an Android tablet, an Android device inside here, the guts, which means it supports Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You could hook up a Bluetooth joystick to this. You could go set this on your entertainment system or next to your TV, run the HDMI to your TV and use a Bluetooth joystick and play all your games on this thing. Now, this isn't really a commercial. I'm not trying to sell this thing to you. I'm just telling you the features. I'm telling you why I bought it. And then I'm going to tell you why I shouldn't have bought it, which sounds strange. I bought it because I thought, I like all those old games. I like Nintendo games. I like Super Nintendo games. This will do a lot of computer stuff. It will play, the Amiga emulators are on here. Atari, ST, Commodore 64. This, you could put more than, even with the SD card that comes with this, you could put more than a lifetime. You could put 10 times the amount of games that you could play in your life on this one system, right? And so the reason I bought it is because when I looked at it, I thought, I don't ever have to buy anything ever again. I think this is the last gaming console, not a console per se, but as far as portable stuff, I don't think I need to buy anything else. I think this is it. I can't think of a video game. I've one of the emulators that on this is the Scum VM engine, so you could play all the old Lucasfilm point-and-click games. Your Maniac Mansion, your Day of the Tentacle, all that kind of stuff. Indiana Jones, The Fate of Atlantis. So, I just feel like if I could have one thing in my backpack where if I'm going on a road trip, if I'm going on a flight, if I'm going to be stuck somewhere for 8 hours, you take this thing, and by the way, I think it'll run 8 hours. The battery life would be give or take, right? But I shouldn't quote the battery life. I'm not 100% positive, but I remember it being near 8 hours, and on standby, of course, it's much longer. So this is like the one thing. Like, I'm done. Like, I could buy this thing and I could be done. Imagine being stuck in a doctor's office for an hour. They say, "Hey, it's going to be an extra hour," and my go-to would be to pull out my phone. Right, pull out my phone. Let's go look what's happening on Discord. Let's go scroll through Facebook, scroll through Twitter, check news, I mean, so I could entertain myself, but then if it's going to be 2 hours of this, that, maybe even watch a movie, I don't know. But the point is that what if you go, man, I'd like to play my favorite video game, one of my favorite video games of all time, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 on the PlayStation. This thing doesn't. That's why it took me so long to write a review for this, was because I put Tony Hawk on here, and then I just played that for hours, and I didn't write a review. Imagine going, you know what, Nintendo, maybe the Atari 7800, which is a system I haven't gone through, but I copied all the ROMs over. I'm only familiar with a few Atari 7800 games. Maybe I start going through them all. You know what else I would do? I would use convenient headphones so I didn't bother other people in the lobby. Did I mention that? Bluetooth headphones I could use, or normal earbuds. That I still have some old earbuds that use this the smaller headphone jack. I just feel like this is a thing, and also our world is switched and is switching to where charging something off USB is pretty simple. My car has USB ports. My laptop has USB ports. In my laptop bag, I have one of those battery charging packs that takes USB ports. So I don't feel like I'm going to get stuck somewhere and go, I can't charge this thing. I can't, I mean, if I were, out and about or whatever, and I had this thing, either it's going to have a charge or I could plug it in to something and charge it. So I'm not worried about that. So super convenient. I'm not really a carrying case kind of guy. I'm more throw this in a pocket but it's a little big to go in your pocket, but throw this in a backpack or something. But the screen on this is so beautiful, and I never, ever want it to be besmirched. So I probably will keep it in that case. That just seems like a good idea. Yeah, I just feel like if I only have to own one thing, I can own this. So that is the reason why I bought it. Now, let me tell you why I shouldn't have bought it. This does give me portability. So I'll grant you that. But this is the problem that long time, you know what, I'm going to tell you just a side thing. As you know, I'm a huge fan of the original Star Wars trilogy. I'm having to start to distinguish that. It's hard to say I'm a fan of Star Wars. I'm starting to say I'm a fan of the original Star Wars trilogy. But when the original Star Wars came out on VHS tape, I owned copies. I owned copies of that movie. And then in 94, when they came out with the Star Wars box set on VHS tape, I bought that as well. And then in the late 90s, 97, 98, when they released the THX version on VHS tape, I bought them again. I bought them on VCD. I literally bought a licensed copy of Star Wars on VCD. It came from, I believe, Singapore. But they released it over there in VCD format. And then eventually they did release it as DVDs. And then they released it as another DVD box set. And they released it as Blu-ray. And so I keep buying them. And why do I keep buying them? It's stupid. I mean, obviously, the point of buying those is that they increase in resolution, right? The downside is that they keep adding stupid cartoon characters to the movies that weren't originally there. But regardless, it's the same movie. I mean, there's slight differences, right? But it's the same movie. But I keep buying it, And so as I spin around this room and I just look and I make a mental note to myself, I would say every system that's on this handheld, from the oldest, Atari 2600 that's on here in television, that stuff, all the way up to the Dreamcast, the GameCube, the PS2, Sega Saturn, all those things. I can play all those on the computer that I am recording this video and talking to you on right now. It does all those things. So I don't need to play this in my house because I have that, right? And you go, well, you might be using your computer. But if I rotate very so slightly to my left is my Mister, which is the FPGA gaming system. And it will not play a lot of the things that are on this. I mean, the highest thing I think it plays would be, your most advanced system would probably be the Sony PlayStation. There's a Nintendo 64 core in the works, but you're not going to get PS2, Dreamcast, blah, 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 blah. But all the old 8-bit, 16-bit, and computer stuff, it does better because you've got a keyboard. But the point is, I'm getting in the weeds here. The point is that for the old ROMs, the emulators, things like that, it will play all those, right? And then if you rotate right here, I have a Raspberry Pi set up. And the Raspberry Pi is hooked up to a TV over in the corner of the room. And the Raspberry Pi has all those things. And it actually has RetroArch on it, which is what this emulator, this Retroid Pocket has on it. It's right there. I mean, and then I have other ways to play games, and if you get into specific things like Commodore 64, I have a Commodore 64 hooked up back there, and other Commodore 64s. So I already have ways to play all these games. Now, I may not have a specific way. I didn't necessarily have a way to play them on the go. How often will I play them on the go? Probably not very often. So that's the disconnect in my brain. Part of my brain says, you should buy this because if you're doing gaming on the go, now, as you know, I'm working on Big Rob's van, my side project where I'm turning a van into a camper, and the idea is to go out on these weekend drives and go hang out and stuff. So that was one of the things I thought about with this. I thought, well, if I had this Retroid Pocket, and I'm out there in a van, I'm killing time or whatever, hey, I could go play some games. From the van life videos I watch, it seems like more time is spent hunting for places to sleep and cooking food. So, and not as much time trying to get a high score on Super Mario Brothers 3. So that may not be a problem that I have. But regardless, that was my mindset. I thought, if I'm on the go, if I'm out doing that, this is the device. This is the last device that I will ever need to do that. By the way, when I bought the last one, I said, this is the last device I'll ever need, so this might not be true. But that's the idea, right? Portable gaming, here you go. One-stop shop, you're done deal. But the reality, the other half of my brain says, it is the solution for that, but you didn't need a solution for that. You don't do that much gaming on the go. You don't go outside and play games. You don't play games on road trips. You listen to podcasts. You talk to your wife. You listen to music. And those are all true things too, you know? So, I would say this is my, it's not really a review, but this is my, to sum it up, I would say this is a 100% the best possible thing for playing games on the go right now. It's not the only one. There's, and I can't really say best because there's a lot of ones that are out there that are similar to this, but I like that, like this has a, there is a Retroid group on Reddit. There are websites. There's a lot of YouTube videos about the Retroid and how to set up the emulators and how to tweak them and make everything. So there does seem to be a community about this particular brand. So I like that. But yeah. So I mean, that's my summary, is that this is the best possible thing for me for playing old games on the go. The downside is I don't play that many old games on the go. But if I do, I've got the best thing here. So, you know, sometimes you buy stuff. Also, I have to blog. I have to do things. So this adds a little bit to the ecosystem in here. I would say for the past month it has lived on my desk because this is where most of my USB ports are. And I can plug it in and have it charged. Also, it is faster to pull the SD micro card out, put it in a reader on your computer and copy files over to it. But usually I'm not in that much of a hurry. You know, like when I copied all the Nintendo ROMs over to it and you know, I just did it over USB-C and it said it'll take 5 minutes. And I went, okay. And then I went and did something else for 5 minutes. It just wasn't that big of a deal. So USB-C is slower way to transfer things, but you know, it just seems like I have the free time. It wasn't a big deal. So anyway, yeah, I'm a fan. I enjoy it, and as you know, it checks off a lot of things for me. It checks off being able to play old games, which I'm all about. I've collected old games. I play old games. I'm an old game guy. So it does that. It lets you do that on the go. It has a beautiful screen. It has a color template case here that reminds me of the Super Nintendo, so I get enjoyment out of that. And it's kind of a not quite mainstream. It's a little quirky piece of electronic equipment, which will go nicely in my collection of other quirky pieces of electronic equipment. So, hey, thanks for checking out this episode of Rando Rob. I've got to keep uploading the older episodes of Rando Rob, so I'm going to try to do that this week. And we've got a new episode of Throwback Reviews out, so I'll put that on my podcast feed. If you're not subscribed to the Throwback Reviews feed on Apple or any of the other places where you get your feeds, you can always get it from my feed as well. I usually add it a day or two afterwards. And I've got new Sprite Castle, new You Don't Know Flack, and projects working on the van. So there's never a dull moment around here. Thanks for watching. If you like playing old games, go pick you up a Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, and I'll see you here soon.